Hello and welcome to my video. I'm going to be going over 3 different questions about 19th and 20th century philosophy. So let's get started. The first one is this one. Explain and evaluate Kierkegaard's view of the relationship between neighborly love and the special loves. Give concrete examples. So basically, Kierkegaard believes that there are 2 different types of love, preferential and neighborly. There's the preferential type of love, also called special love, and that's based on desire or on the animalistic instincts that we have. It's egotistical, selfish, non-permanent. So I want to be around a friend because I can get something out of it. I befriend people who make me look better. I quickly grow tired of relationships and abandon them, etc. Me wanting to be around a good friend is an example of preferential love. I choose to be around my friend, therefore making it something preferential. The preferential loves are very much skewed by self-interest, asking, what about this situation can benefit me? They're super possessive, tying into that self-interest, yelling that no one else can have my person, they can only benefit me. They're also very two-sided, requiring reciprocation, unlike the second type of love, neighborly love, which is more of a duty. Kierkegaard explains it as something coming from the transcendent, from God. It's unlike preferential love. It's moral, which is unlike preferential love, which is selfish and asks, what can I get out of this? It's motivated by God, but we have to choose it, similar to Kant's moral actions. These two are clearly contradicting each other, and Kierkegaard recognizes this, saying that neighborly loves are equally the Christian opposition to the autonomy of impulse and inclination. So he proposes a few different ways to explain the ways that they interact. He offers the limiting view, the redescribed eros view, the second redescribed eros view, and redescribing agape, and then the perpetual war. All of these are relatively different from each other, so I'll give a quick explanation on each of them. The limiting view is that the two can work together, but only if the preferential love is limited by the conscience. Basically, the beloveds and friends are brought down to the level of neighborly love. It doesn't completely eliminate the preferential nature of preferential love, but it caps it at a certain point, trying to keep neighborly and preferential love as close to each other as they can. This one is a little wonky, and I really dislike the cap on the preferential lovers. I just think that it's weird, and I don't like the idea of limiting love. The redescribing eros number 1 is the emo view, as I like to call it. Essentially, no one is as good as we think that they are. Like, fair enough, but it's very negative. Kierkegaard says that we should bring our preferential lovers down to the level of our neighbors, agreeing with the limiting view, but only because that's where our lovers and beloveds belong. We choose our preferences because of an attraction, but in this view, that attraction is misfounded. The beloveds aren't worth loving, they're not good. I really don't like this one, but I think that it makes a fair point about just people in general, but I don't like it. The second one, redescribe eros number 2. This one is very similar to redescribing eros number 1, obviously, but instead of going down a more emo path, Kierkegaard decides to go down more of a church path. He says that we should activate our God filter and see our preferential lovers how God sees them. When we start to see them through that view, our opinions on them change to reflect God's more. They grow to be closer to our neighborly love simply because, like God, we want to love everyone equally. This is the view that Kierkegaard most likely took himself. It fits very well with his Christianity. I'm not totally sold on it, but I think it's better than the other 2 mentioned so far. Redescribing agape. This theory simply claims that all neighborly love has preferential elements connected to it. Like the God filter, we use the preferential filter or the erotic filter, looking for every way to value the neighbors that we see. The guy on the bench, you see him feed pigeons, and you value his generosity. You see a guy who's a little weird, but you like the way that he dresses, so you value that, and etc. This is the view that I choose to take. I think that it fits with reality a little bit more and involves more of a conscious choice than the others, which I really like. The final one, perpetual war. The 2 types of love can never be connected. They're so far opposite that they'll never be able to reconcile. People are constantly split between the 2 loves, never able to combine them. I really don't like this one. I just think it's wrong. the two types of love can be combined. Look at redescribing Eros and redescribing Agape. They make sense and they work in real life, which contradicts this entire view. Overall, I think that Kierkegaard gives some interesting different views of how the two types of love interact with each other, and I really enjoy thinking about them. Personally, I value redescribing Eros number 2 and redescribing Agape the most. I think that they fit the descriptions of the two types of love that Kierkegaard gives the best. So, next question, which is, generally, under which conditions can the law or morality violate an individual's liberty for Mill? Give one or two concrete examples that John Stuart Mill uses to establish the validity of this general principle. Are you convinced? So, basically, the only time that the law, morality, or other people can violate individual liberty is if the person is violating another person or people's individuality. So, here's an example. So if Larry is doing crack, Mill has no issue with him doing crack because all that he's only hurting himself, and by hurting himself he's just expressing his own individuality. Mill uses the example of drunkenness to explain this moral issue further, saying that no person ought to be punished for being drunk, but a soldier or a person should be punished for being drunk on duty. Whenever, in short, there is definite damage or risk of damage to either an individual or the public, the case is then taken out of the province of liberty and placed into that of morality or law. It gets a little confusing once we get into things that could or could not intrude on personal freedom, because someone's freedom being legitimately limited and someone feeling offended are two different things. So Mill has no issue with the KKK and Nazis saying racist things, but because that isn't intruding on people's personal individuality. But if someone tries to stop a Nazi from saying things that they disagree with and that are racist, then that person trying to stop them is then intruding on the Nazis' sense of individuality and them expressing themselves. I don't like it. I think he's right, but I just really don't like that people are able to spout foul things that they think. But I do agree with Mill when he says that stopping them from saying these things is intruding on their own sense of individuality. I think that Mill is right about the morality of stopping someone else's part. If someone is going to harm another person, then it is time to stop them. But I'm not sure about what he would say about suicide, about someone being suicidal, if we should stop them from killing themselves, because he's in the no one knows more about their own well-being than themselves camp. There's the idea sort of taken from a Lockean view of memory, which is that a person killing themselves would be harming someone else down the road. And Larry 25 years from now is a completely different person than Larry is now. So if Larry committed suicide now, he would be hurting Larry 25 years in the future, which is a different person, so therefore he would be harming another person, which in Mill's theory of individuality, morally he should be stopped from killing himself. It's still questionable. I'm divided because I think that yes, stopping someone from suicide is obviously a good thing, but at the same time I do think that the no one cares more about their own well-being than themselves does ring true. I'm still divided on Mill's intrusion of individuality. I do think that he's 100% right when it comes to harming others, but I'm just not so sure about the other stuff. So, next question. Explain your own view of sexual difference by setting it in the conversation with the views of Chapter 4, Sexual Difference in Stone. So, before I really dive into the question, I need to define my terms, mainly my definition of gender and sex. Gender is mainly socially constructed, but slightly based on sex. So there can be as many genders as desired. Sex is the biological part, and made up of necessary biological functions. If someone has 3 male and 1 female, then they're male, and if someone is born with 2 male and 2 female, then they're in the middle and they have the freedom to choose which they identify as. So when it comes to sexual difference, Stone introduces 2 different main views. One is Luce, I'm not sure how to say her name, Irigary's view, and the other is the Anglo-American difference view. Irigary's view is more negative and based on Lucan's view of language and desire. Lucan claims that all desire is phallocentric, and Irigary argues against him, but admits that his reasoning is true for most of humanity and delegates women to an almost non-existent role. To Irigaray, women don't have a positive identity at all, and that's the main sexual difference. Men have a positive identity, and while women are forced to be passive, while men have a positive identity, while women are forced to be passive and secondary to men. The Anglo-American difference view is similar but less dramatic. They acknowledge that men and women are very different and want women's differences to be acknowledged. I think that I would have to side with Irigaray. Stone explains her view as Western culture denies a positive female identity in that it gives women no way to understand and experience themselves to be female-bodied without also seeing themselves as passive, secondary to men, etc. She then goes on into further detail, explaining what she'd want from a women's positive view, which is a culture that provided a positive female identity would permit women to take themselves to be both female-bodied and active, equivalent in worth to men, etc. I really like Irigaray's view because I think that she's very right in her view. Women do not have a positive view of themselves as female-bodied, and any woman who is able to claim herself as active and equivalent to men is seen as wrong, just biologically wrong. She must be a lesbian or something else is wrong with her. It's just not, that's not true at all, and Irigaray's explanation is good. I'm not sure if I agree with her solution, but her acknowledgement of the issue is spot on. I think that in a perfect world, everyone could be equal with women leading and men taking the back seat, but the inverse also happening. That's pretty much all of my answers to all the questions, so I hope I answered them all right. Adios.